All right, so we are calling the meeting to order, and first thing on the agenda is just approval of agenda. For council members, I need to hear from each person if you're approving the agenda. Hans?
I do.
Stephen?
I do. I'm just wondering if we should put the residents' questions up. I don't know if we have any residents on the line, but we didn't get to it the last time.
That's why they're at the end, and if we can make it through, they'll have a chance.
Okay, as long as we
It's up
get
to
to
council.
them.
Stephen, it's
Yeah.
up to council, so
Yeah, just
it's
a
up
thought.
to council.
Yeah,
Council,
just
do you
on-
want to do you want to change the order?
Yes, I would like to do that. I think we owe that to the residents who didn't get a chance last time.
Phil, do you want to change?
Change, please.
Okay. And Jerry Lee. So Hans,
Yes.
we're going to go ahead and change. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So first item then is resident questions. Are there residents on the call? And if so, I need you to state your name and the street. And if there's a lot of overlap, I'm going to have to pick somebody. So first of all, I don't even know who's on. So are there any resident who has a question? Just say yes.
This is Andrea. I don't think there are any residents on.
Okay. Well, then
You're not muted.
Pardon me?
Yeah, don't look like anybody showed on.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, we are going to move to action then. Action item. Introduction of the ordinance for 2020 FY21 budget. And I am going to let Andrea lead this off. Andrea?
Sure. So I can run through the changes if that's what council would like for each section, and then we can review each section. So if I could start with revenues. Does that sound good, or does everybody feel prepared to have this discussion a different way?
I'm pretty much set with, I went through what you put together and the changes you made, and they all made sense to me. And I think you found some really nice savings in town administration, which I would compliment you on.
Great, thank you.
And I would agree, and I've reviewed it also, so I'm comfortable with what I've seen for the changes.
So Stephen, I'm kind of in the same boat as Phil and Hans. I reviewed it, especially I had Andrea's notes, but everything seemed rational to me, and kind of carried forward what we were talking about last time. So.
Jerry Lee, I agree. I reviewed the changes, and I think it's consistent with what we discussed. The only thing I do want to just make sure that we note that somewhere that if we see early indications that revenue is significantly lower than expected, that we plan for maybe a quarter year adjustment instead of a mid-year adjustment this year in the situation.
Yep.
I think I agree with that. I think that's a really good idea. That the order of the day is going to be pay attention to what's going on around us and what's happening in the country and in the world, and then react in a way that's responsible.
Yep. I think at a minimum, we may be talking about adjusting based on the carryover as a kind of a first step that would be done early in the fiscal year, and then
That's correct.
I defer to Mayor Kaki. I'd like to hear what you have to say as well, but I think a mid-year, if an adjustment needs to happen before we typically do in the mid-year, I think that that would be fine, and we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. It's always made sense to me that you have a first look at the beginning of the fiscal year on really how things are, even if that's within 30 to 40 days, and you can get a sense of what your carryover is as well. So we should, like Andrea says, know by the close of the fiscal year and close of the books that we'll have a very, very, very good idea about the carryover. And then, if there's still something that we need to straighten out, whether it's revenue or the operations budget, that we can also call a meeting or have that meeting in, the whatever town council meeting schedule it would work on. So we do not have to wait till the mid-year. So I'm fine with that.
Good.
Sounds good.
I would suggest that if you having the first review as when the carryover is known, so that and I would strongly urge that we put it in contingency, so that we have flexibility in using it where we need to, rather than pigeonholing it to a specific area off the bat.
Right. I think that, Hans, rather than make a steadfast commitment to that, I think it would behoove us all to at least first look at what's going on before we make that commitment. But absolutely, and every council meeting, there's always a monthly budget report, so we're also getting a sense of where things are, just so everybody realizes that too.
I think that's exactly what Andrea put in her second note right after on the consumer price index.
Yeah, right. That is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so so that was revenue. Did you guys want to pick up on any changes on the operations or any other? We'll start with operations. Any other place on operations?
But
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I do want to make a comment about revenue. And we talked about it last time, and we made some nice adjustments. And this is in the intergovernmental revenue from the county on the one hand, and then highway user funding from the state. First of all, the state could just do as they did last time with the highway user fund money. Say, we're going to use those monies for our budget, and you can find a way to balance your budget however you choose. And that my concern is twofold. Is even assuming that that the state uses the same calculation technique as they have in the past. The reality is that people are traveling a lot less, and that means that they're buying a lot less gasoline. So the pie is going to be much smaller, maybe even as low as 50% of what it was last year. So it's a twofold issue where the state won't have as much money to disperse, and they may decide not to disperse it at all. So I caution that the number that we're putting in, I think it's we went down to 56,000 for the county and 35,000 for from MDOT.
Yeah.
So I think it's still a steep curve on both those to make the numbers that we're projecting, but it's just be aware of it.
Okay, Hans. Right. And just so you know, there's a very, very robust, communication campaign going on at the MML level with the county and state. So it's not unknown to anybody what's going on. So keeping our fingers crossed here that this is still going to happen.
The reality is that MML spent the last 10 years fighting for that to share the money back, and they just got it renewed.
That's right.
This hits.
That's right.
So,
you're right. So I'm hoping that, Andrea and I've got that in the ballpark. It's hard to know. Even the county council doesn't know for sure, but everybody knows we're all looking at them to be sure we're getting not too much of a reduction, if any. So we're hedging. Andrea and I are just hedging.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that, we're going to probably take the hit at the end of this fiscal year and probably into the beginning of next fiscal year, but there's a reasonable chance that we might actually be able to come back to some amount of normalcy later on in next fiscal year.
In the next, you mean FY22, right?
No, 21, because
you're meaning
Yeah.
So you're meaning like you're meaning calendar year 22, like spring, but we'll be still in FY21. We might have some bounce back.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. What I'm hearing everything is that, yeah, it could be later in FY21 or 22. But that's at the national level. All right. Well, we're certainly we're about 27% lower on the intergovernmental receipts. So I think that's a pretty good place to be. I wouldn't knock it down any further, but I do defer to all of you.
I mean, you have to come up with a number, and then just assume that it's kind of out of our control, and we just hope that we're doing a good game at guessing what we might get, and we'll just have to be flexible and to make adjustments to the budget.
That's right.
Because inevitably we will need to be.
And we'll know more in 2 or 3 months. As carryover, as we see at least our carryover. Okay, so Andrea, do you want to say anything more about this on the revenue page, or does anybody else want to have any?
Covered it, yep.
Okay. Is it okay then if we go ahead and move over to the operations report?
It is for me.
Okay, we're going to move over to the operations now. Andrea, you want to lead us through that?
Sure. I would offer the same thing here, that maybe I'm prepared if I need to talk through kind of each change, but maybe instead the best approach would be to ask council members if they have any particular line items that they want to discuss.
I don't think it's really a question, but more just probably stating the obvious on a lot of things in town administration, like 11.0, like you adjusted some of those or highlighted yellow, but we probably just had to be as careful as we possibly can with our spending with all the unknowns. So try to watch ourselves with legal fees and everything else, just any other kind of outside consultants, make sure it's absolutely something that's got to move forward now versus could be held. But I think it's, like I said, it's probably stating the obvious. We're probably all thinking that. So.
Yeah. And I'm sensitive to that too. That going into the next year, that that there are a lot of unknowns, and that there may need to be some additional discussions on some of these items. So I understand that. Are there any other questions? Any other items to discuss?
This is Phil. I'm okay.
Stephen, same.
Again, I am as well. I just want to let you know, Andrea, that I really am pleased by the fact that you found $15,000 of reductions, and in infrastructure and equipment, you found another $16,000, and I think those make a huge difference in figuring out exactly how we're going to work out the operations side of the equation next year.
Yeah, and I think there's still a contingency that I feel comfortable with, that gives some cushion. Obviously, it'd be nice if there's a little more, but that's still a good scenario. So.
This is Jerry. I have no questions. It looks consistent with what we agreed to the other night.
One question that I have, and is on the space that's opened up in the Penn Place. It seems to me we need revenue for that if we're going to try to have a chance to balance the budget. And I was wondering, what are we planning to do to try to find a tenant for the space that we have, which is leaving us with a $30,000 hole?
Yeah, and so one development as of yesterday is that the small office will be vacated also by the end of May. So this just came up. but this will be, I mean, this is something that will obviously need my attention sooner than later, but right now I sort of by necessity have to get through the election piece. Obviously, I don't want to let this go too long, but that will be sort of quickly on the heels of the election in terms of priorities and figuring out what's going to happen there, and discussions, if there's further discussions that need to happen with council and all of that.
Yeah, this is not a criticism, Andrea. This is simply, it's a red flag.
Sure. Understood.
That being said, I would note that we should probably get that office consultant sooner rather than later, because we've got the chance now to do things without disturbing a tenant. If we're going to do something.
Yep.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Phil?
I was just saying that we should try and get that office layout consultant that we put some money in sooner rather than later. I understand about the election, but because if we can do that way, we won't disturb any tenants if we decide we want to make changes to the footprint.
I think that's a necessary step to have, and one we talked about before. I think one of the other big pieces of this is to figure out to really quantify the need, because I think the town has roughly the same amount of houses it did 20 years ago, and like when Penn Place was planned and developed, it's got maybe a couple more assets like the nursery school and more landscaping to do, but the town is essentially the same as it was 20 years ago. So it may be that they undershot it back then with how much they planned, but I think it probably good to kind of look at over time what's changed to kind of see where things may have changed and what's necessary to work with that.
Okay, if I might interject on something, because I know this was brought up at the last meeting. You may recall that the former town manager had asked for an increase for staff, and because of accretion of duties. Mm-hmm. And while some have been increased, there was a major one for budget, and that has still fallen to the town manager. And it wasn't done too well with the former town manager. And when I became mayor, I really had to get very, very involved. And now we have Andrea who's picking this up, but it's just another major responsibility, not to mention all the other things that did not get done in prior years that she's now working on. So there is a lot more work, and you only got one professional really doing it, if I might be so bold to say. And if you want to cut back that level of responsibility, it is your option. But to be demanding, or not to demand, but to be considering all the work that is now being done, and to pull that away, that's one option. But otherwise, you've got a lot more getting done, and people who are, Andrea, is still hoping that she can get some kind of some part-time people to come in and help, or even, if you want, a deputy town manager. There is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not intimately involved in it. I just know when I came here in 2009, when I went up to the office a couple times, like there was usually just one person, maybe two. And I wasn't here back when Penn Place was planned, but it seemed like it was kind of planned for that. I just don't know what's changed between, say, 2000 and 2010 and now. It would just help to have some specifics if there were some things that were just not getting done for.
I think I just explained that.
Yeah. But,
I think I just explained that.
Oh, I know, but it's one thing
that hadn't get done.
Yeah, but what is it? I mean, we just don't. I'm not saying we need to cover it all now.
I just told you.
I didn't really.
You want me to repeat that again?
Um,
Andrea is doing a lot of more and more of the budget. It is her role, after all. She's the CFO to me, and she is the clerk treasurer to you all. There is lots and lots to be done on coding and office policy that has not been updated in years. And she's trying to get that done little by little, but it's very hard when she's being pulled in other directions as well. This job has become much more broad in terms of expectations and the responsibilities. And I think she's going to need help. And even people who come in occasionally, there's no place really for them. Just like there's never been, really a good setting for holding meetings in this Penn Place, because it's has been right next to Elizabeth, and that is incredibly distracting, and it's not a practical setting. We have used my office, but then, there are times when, again, Andrea needs a private space for private discussion. I mean, I can keep going, and Andrea, if you would like to keep going, fill people in on what else you're doing.
This is
I think the
sorry.
sort of underlying discussion is, okay, I was going to keep it quick. Just that the underlying discussion, I think, is that the amount of work that's happening and how that work gets done and how that work can get done in a efficient way, and having an efficient use of space and having a proper way to file and store things is all related to the amount of space that we have. So it's part of the ability to be able to manage effectively is having adequate space. It's part and parcel of the same kind of discussion. It's no different than what all of us are doing at home right now, right? Working from home. For me anyway, I'm at a little tiny desk in my bedroom trying to, do various things, right? That's not an ideal work setting, and I'm sure everybody's experiencing that right now. It's sort of no different how it translates for us here in the office, that we make do, and we think we still are producing good quality work, but we also know it's not the best way of doing things.
And we're only at this point looking at possibly, and we're only at this point considering to bring somebody in to look at how the space can be better utilized. And that would even have, impact on who else, what other tenant or tenants we could bring in. So we ought to take the advantage now while the space is vacant and see what can be done. I mean, we've got a huge space next door that Pat Keating left. We know that Black Market needs extra space, and they're still a tenant. So there are good reasons to at least bring the consultant in to look at the space, and if there's a way we can, be more efficient about the space.
Yeah, I'm not saying not to. I mean, that was
Practical.
me that originally suggested that, with having somebody look at the space. But
well, that's why we're saying we should still do it, because you're still asking what's been done.
Yeah, and I just want,
or what's changed. So we're trying to explain that, Stephen, what's changed and why we still need to have somebody look at the space.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it doesn't get decoupled from that. Just make sure we're doing it all holistically. It was offices are getting small. My office is going to get smaller in a couple of months, or not a couple of months, a couple of years, because we're moving to a different building, and it's just kind of the general trend. And 20 years ago, you had desktop computers and a little bit more spread out. Things are supposed to get more digital, but they don't necessarily get that much smaller. But so I think it's just open question to be looked at. I don't think any of us have the answer. So
that's right.
So.
Jerry,
Andrea,
you were going to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. So Andrea, you had offered to show people the space. So I would definitely like once we're able to, given the status of the coronavirus situation, to be able to come and tour the space and hear and also hear and see your perspective with the space in front of us. So I look forward to that opportunity, and I think having the space consultant help us out with this will be useful. So thank you.
Sure, you bet.
Okay, so it doesn't, do we have any changes on operation budget? Or are we good? If anybody wants a change, I only need to hear one yes. But if I don't hear any yes, then I'll ask if you're all okay. So is there any change to the operations budget? Okay, I don't hear anything, so it looks like we're good with the operations budget. So Hans, are you good with operations, correct? Because we kind of reopened this, so.
Yeah, just
Yes?
just a minute. Go around to the others. I'm just looking through my notes here because I thought I had some things.
Okay, well, we already took this kind of vote, but then we opened it again. Stephen, are
Okay.
you okay with operations?
I'm good.
Okay, Phil, are you okay?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, Jerry Lee, are you okay?
I'm good with operations, thanks.
Okay, and Hans, you said you wanted to look at something. Tell me if you're okay.
There was one thought I had that was under, in part, some of the notes that Andrea put together already include this, and they basically say that depending on, this will be assessed, whatever the line item is, this will be assessed at a later date to see how well the economy is going, how well we're doing with our revenue, and based on that and those considerations, we would decide to move forward with it or not. And I think it would be useful to have a list of the items that we're planning to do, where we can say that should be in the bucket that says we'll put it in the budget because it makes sense. But it should be one of the considerations or one of the projects or one of the items that we
special look at.
We'll have to tackle if things don't turn around. And those things, for instance, would include things like, just a minute, got too many papers on my desk here. The train whistle, while it's been taken out of the notes, the number of dollars stays the same. And my sense is the train whistle is a want to have, not need to have. And if things don't turn around, that's an item we should take out of this budget until we can see our way through paying for it. And the same thing with, it's things like that. It'd be nice if we could say, I don't think we have to do that today, but it certainly should be something that we look at the first review, so that we identify those items which
Good
are
idea.
really in the want to have, not need to have category. So that makes it easier. It provides the underpinning of a way of how to look at an activity or a service that says, we don't really need to do that. Let's not do that this year, given our finances.
That's a good idea. Do you think so, Andrea? Because we have some of those notes, but we can make sure we call them out or asterisk them somehow.
Yeah, I would.
Separate list.
It does get, I mean, I guess I'm sort of two minds on this. One is that I think we're obviously going to be very cautious during the first couple quarters of the fiscal year anyway, in terms of our spending. So I think that will happen quite naturally. I think for some of these other items, that this is sort of what I was alluding to earlier, that I know that there's a sensitivity around this, so I would, make sure that I was in communication with council about some of these things, right? So it's not like there would be a surprise that all of a sudden a trained consultant whistle person had been hired and here's the findings or that kind of thing, right? It'd be a discussion, I think, before for contracting with somebody, if this is something we want to do in the first quarter, if we're not sure about what's happening, right? So I'm sort of one mind that we're already going to be treating kind of the entire budget cautiously. And then if we do want to call out certain things, then I would kind of kick that back to council to say, what are the things that you want to have that for that notation? I mean, I feel like I sort of know intuitively what are the things that we're going to wait on and what are the things that we need to move forward on, right? But like the safety improvements for the archives shouldn't wait, right? It's
Mhm.
safety related. You know, but
And then we have, for example,
other things,
you know, looking at, for the Arboretum Committee and assessing at the mid-year budget for any adjustment. We can also be looking at that in the first quarter review as well, just to get a sense, you know, whether the timing is right to adjust then or still continue to wait till mid-year.
typically where I put in a note like that, it was because it was less than maybe we had hoped or we would have typically budgeted for that line item. So it's a cue to remember during the mid-year to relook at that one specifically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Didn't we have something for the land use, a consultant for land use, and also
That's on the
for the town hall planning? Is that on capital?
Capital, yeah, both capital.
For consultant? Okay. Okay, is that all right? Does that address your thought there, Hans?
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Okay. So you're now good with operations budget?
Yep.
Okay. All right,
Oh,
great.
there's only one thing I want to put. I'm pleased with the fact that we bumped up contingency on the operations budget by about $27,000. So we're now at 57,000. That's a good start.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, let's move on to capital then. Andrea, you want to kick that off for us?
Sure, kind of handle this the same way. I would just say, start by asking if any council members have any particular lines that they'd like to discuss. Because I would just add that on 32.6, the reason that's an add there is because I forgot to budget something for that previously. So Stephen and I emailed, and that may be a little low, but I wanted to have something in there.
I'm sorry, where are you?
On 32.6.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the land use efforts, but that probably takes months of in-town effort before it would ever get to that. So it probably works well with the timing of having a quarter and mid-year adjustment to be able to know if we need somebody and what's going to cost.
Can I just suggest that for clarity's sake, you make a footnote and say what the thing is in other, because it's kind of confusing if you don't know any better.
It is under 32.6 in the revised budget notes.
But you want that as a line item, Phil?
No, I'm just saying at the bottom of the budget table.
Oh, okay.
Footnotes, throw in what. Yeah, asterisk. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Asterisk. Okay.
Actually, is capital the right place for that? Because it would be like a consultant for dealing with the county to like change the Garrett Park overlay as an example. Is that operations more, or is that capital?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this fits right in with the IT kind of planning work and the tree plan and
Okay.
town hall planning. So I know it's a little strange, but I think because it's under the capital planning and because we have other capital items that have worked that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I defer to you all if you want to move it, but then we'll have to, probably pull from contingency if it's going to be on the operations side.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine with me if it seems rational to you. So.
Yeah.
I don't have any other comments on capital.
I'm fine with capital as well.
This is Jerry Lee, no capital questions.
I'm also fine with capital now.
Oh, Kaki, you're still muted.
Okay, sorry. I was sharpening a pencil. Okay, so it looks like we're going to have a unanimous vote on this introduction. So without any further ado, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move that we adopt FY 2021 capital and operating budgets.
Anybody want a second?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who was second.
This was Jerry Lee. I'll second it.
Okay, I can't, all right, who, let's see, Hans has made I'm hearing a lot of feedback there. Jerry Lee, did you say you
That's
seconded?
on Jerry Lee's. Yeah, Jerry Lee seconded it, but hers has some feedback. So I think that's what you're hearing. Yep.
Okay, so Jerry Lee seconded. Okay, all in favor? Just say aye.
Aye.
Hans, Stephen, Phil, Jerry Lee. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll make that. Okay, thank you. All right, this is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrea, for doing a super job on this budget. Given all the other responsibilities and time constraints, I really appreciate it and everybody's input and feedback. Okay, we are at the end of this meeting. We had moved yes, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge that I believe this will be Hans Wagner's last town council meeting as town council member. So just didn't want that to pass without us acknowledging it and thanking him for his, is it 17 years of service, Hans?
Yeah.
Well, Hans?
Well, I think there's another council meeting May 11th, isn't it?
No, we don't have the election is, you want to
The election
describe that,
results
Andrea?
Yeah, so that's something that Kaki and I were just emailing about earlier today as we were thinking through this. So the charter language is that the candidates are sworn in basically at the first meeting following the election. If we hold the meeting on May 11th, that's challenging because the vote count will not have happened yet. I think the most straightforward thing to do is to hold the meeting probably the following Monday, maybe the 18th if that works for folks. And that way it's crystal clear that it's the first meeting after the election.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you all have done that in the past.
I haven't had to.
You know, when council members are leaving and coming on, how you all have handled that. But in terms of who shows up, but I would assume that if they're getting sworn in that day, then that new council would be then sitting for that meeting, right?
Yeah, when we worked on the election stuff, that part of the strategy with that was to give enough of a window in case there were any ballots that had to be recounted or anything else, more work for the election judges, that they have enough time, they wouldn't be under an immense pressure to announce that there would be 6-7 days and then have that next meeting be the time to swear in.
Yeah, and just on a totally practical level, the ballots are getting mailed to New Jersey. So just to get there in time and to make sure that there's plenty of time so that that's hopefully not an issue.
And the council, I'm sorry, and the election vote is going to happen on the 12th, right?
For the counting.
The counting.
The count.
Mm-hmm.
The election.
Vote count, yeah.
Vote count. So you're looking at what date? Is that May 18th for the next?
Well, I mean, I suppose I guess I would defer to you all since we have Fridays at 5 sort of held there. That's one option, or the 18th is another option, but we would need to check in with probably all of the candidates.
Well, we haven't done that before, Andrea. We've always just after the election and the announcement of who has won the most votes, the majority of votes, that they're expected to show up for the next council meeting.
I just only because it's a different schedule than usual is all I'm. Was the only reason for that suggestion.
Well, the 12th is still 6
It would be
days
a
ahead, right?
meeting.
So
Sorry, say that.
the 12th is still 6 days ahead of the 18th, and I think was it you had something special about the 14th? Was that like a backstop date for when they were counting or something like that? But even the 14th is ahead. For some reason, I remember you saying something about 14th.
14th doesn't. I'm trying to think. Doesn't ring any bells for me right now.
Okay, it could be my imagination.
I'm sorry, what are you asking, Stephen?
I was just trying to confirm that there's enough time between the 18th and when the election will be known, the election results will be known, to be able to do that process to have, which I think is where we started, that going to have the next full council meeting be that the 18th, the Monday after the election results are known, instead of the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to suggest that the last time we were on the phone, but I forgot it. So looks like you all thought about it in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm glad Kathy was thinking about it. I was thinking about it, but I hadn't made the appropriate connection in my brain. So
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, the
Yeah,
other
that,
thing,
I think the 18th, so it sounds like it might be the preferable way to go.
yeah, this is Phil. So the other thing to consider is that this will, again, obviously be another virtual meeting. So at that point, it's going to be a lot easier for people to be able to show up, even if they maybe had some type of thing. But I think it's just incumbent on whoever gets elected to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that puts another little spin on things as far as getting the county clerk to be swearing people in. Now, I can swear in council members, but I don't know if I can do it virtually. And then the county clerk has to swear me in. I could always go down there, I guess. We're assuming I won, but
Do you have to if you're not discontinuing?
yeah, no, you do. It's a new term, new appointment. I'm pretty sure you do, Stephen. I can check on that, but I don't know.
Jackie, I wonder if for swearing in council members, if there's something that needs to be done in person.
Yeah, we have to.
It's a little different, but maybe we could do it outside. You know, it was, I know, something that came up that Louise and I had talked about that,
Mhm.
you know, a couple months ago, that if we had to hold the election and it needed to be in person before the governor's order and all that, that maybe we
Mhm.
could hold it outside and get a tent and, you know, do it that way kind of thing. So just another sort of
Okay.
way to make it a little safer for everybody.
We can, yeah, we ought to kind of look into that and maybe contact the county clerk office.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So we're looking to have a May 18th town council meeting.
Yes, I'm fine with that.
I am too. I wish I feel bad for Hans. We were just talking about it being his last meeting, and then we didn't really totally have it squared away, but
Well,
it does make sense. The 18th.
Okay, Jerry Lynn.
Yes, the 18th is fine with me.
Okay, and Hans, you there? So that we can give you a great thank you for all your dedication. So, yes. Now we all can say thank you very much, Hans, for all that time, that service, that loyalty, that dedication, that effort, those good things that you did for the town. Thank you on behalf of everybody.
You're very welcome, and it's my pleasure.
Thanks, Hans. I spent some time on the Strathmore sidewalks today, so appreciate all you did with that and the street lights and lots of other things around town. So it's been an honor to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hans. It's
And
been great
likewise.
working.
And
Thanks.
likewise. Okay.
Great working with you.
Okay.
We'll have to look for a happy hour opportunity when there is a better conducive environment for that.
I look forward to that day too.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
you.
And thank you. And with that, we are adjourning this meeting.
Okay.
So adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just about 6 o'clock.
Call a 559.
Yeah, we're under an hour.
Yep. Great. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right.